Peters of Michigan is a member of the Armed Services Committee. He was at that hearing today. Senator Peters, thank you for your time this afternoon, sir. I want to start by getting your reaction to something that Senator McCain said to Casey Hunt, that this was an act of war. This hacking was an act of war. Basically, it is technically, but that doesn't mean that you start shooting. Is it even technically an act of war?
I think it is. It is, especially this kind of political warfare that you're seeing, which is an attempt to actively have an influence in an American election. When you think about a foreign government that is intruding on something fundamental to national sovereignty, which is the ability of a country and its people to make decisions as to who will be their next leader, it is certainly an act of war. And I think it represents the next phase of what is considered political warfare, which is not about shooting. It's not about having naval vessels and armies in the field, but it is about using cyber and other tools, and especially with the cyber tool now and what is happening there, we are seeing a proliferation of these kinds of attacks, not just from the Russians, but other countries around the world who can have a fairly inexpensive weapon that can have a very high consequence and can be active in political type activities. So there's no question this is an act of warfare. We have to figure out a way to deal with it. And that's one of the things that came out, I think, in the committee, is that we don't have a sufficient strategy at this point.
But we knew that before the committee hearing, correct? I mean, in terms of what we knew this morning, what was it?
Yeah. Well, no, I think it highlights the fact that we have been talking about this for some time, is that you've got to have a credible deterrence. You can protect cyber networks as much as you can, and we should do that. But ultimately, there has to be a cost that someone pays for hacking accounts, especially if it's a foreign government. If the Russians need to pay a significant price for what they did in our election, particularly with this evidence that has come out. In fact, you heard today, Director Clapper said that the strong statements that he made previously are going to be confirmed, and they're going to be even more robust when the report comes out next week. We have to take firm action, and we've got to let the Russians know that there is a significant price to pay when you interfere with our elections.
In terms of that price, the sanctions that were announced last week by President Obama, some have suggested that those did not go far enough today. James Clapper said that he's a big fan of the sanctions against Russia. What do you say to that? Did they go far enough? Should there be even more sanctions levied? And what should those sanctions look like?
Yeah, and I'm open to it. I think we have to have a discussion of that. I think we have to see what comes out in this report next week, which sounds as if it's going to be much more detailed as to the extent that the Russians may have been involved. You know, Director Clapper was clear that it wasn't just about the hacks in the DNC. There were other activities that were involved in it. I think we need to see the full picture. And when we see that full picture, we can develop those kinds of strategies. But I think, you know, the other thing that came out in this hearing is that we don't have that really spelled out in a comprehensive way, so that we can show the world community, if you do this in the United States, this will be the penalty, and it will be severe. So I'm hoping that what we heard today and what we're going to see next week in the report will lead to the kind of concrete responses necessary to send a strong and clear message to everybody in the world that this is simply unacceptable.
Senator Gary Peters of Michigan. Senator, thank you for your time this afternoon,
Thank
sir.
You.